Hey there, UFH, and welcome back to the Ultimate Fashion History with me, Amanda Halley, and a little series I have running on the channel called FAVE Film Fashion, where we look at some of the 20th century and maybe 21st century's most influential movies. And in this episode, we're going to be looking at a film that I think is probably one of the most misremembered movies of all time. From 1966, Georgie Girl. Misremembered? Well, I certainly misremembered it as being a kind of joyful romp through swinging London. It is far from a swinging romp through London. It is not a celebration of the Youthquake. It is an indictment of the Youthquake. It's not really a comedy. It's a black comedy. It has very dark humor, and it's a far richer and more complex movie in terms of its history than I remembered. It falls somewhere between that standard 60s romp, Smashing Time, The Jokers, The Knack, and far more serious kitchen sink drama like A Taste of Honey or Saturday Night, Sunday Morning. And yet it also borrows from other sort of hip filmic genres that were happening at the time. It borrows from Nouvelle Vague, from Cinema Verité. There's even elements of Fellini in Georgie Girl. The script is obviously influenced by Harold Pinter, but with a little bit of Joe Orton in there as well. So although Georgie Girl didn't actually influence any movies of its era, it borrowed from so many of them that ultimately it's this beautiful little sort of gem of a film that is almost a pastiche of all of these elements that really made up 1960s cinema. In terms of the performances in Georgie Girl, again, I think they were more fettered at the time than they are today. Lynn Redgrave was quite rightly nominated for an Oscar for her performance as Georgie. The same Oscar season, her sister Vanessa was nominated. Both siblings lost out to the powerhouse performance that was Elizabeth Taylor in Who's Afraid of Virginia Woolf. I think this is probably just as well, because when siblings compete, it's never pretty. I know that. And another thing that I think makes Georgie Girl misremembered and a far more interesting movie than I remembered it as being is that there is not one character in the film you would like to have as a friend. And that includes Georgie. Evidently, Lynn Redgrave was quite surprised that so many people liked the character because she really didn't. Evidently, she found Georgie to be quite overbearing and manipulative. I think it is a wonderful movie, an important movie, and I love the way that fashion and clothing was used in this movie, even though there isn't a costume credit. So let's swing down the street, not so fancy-free as it transpires. Directed by Silvio Nadazzano and starring Lynn Redgrave, James Mason, Alan Bates, and a deliciously evil Charlotte Rampling. From 1966, let's take a look at Georgie Girl.
Before we begin, just to remind you that I don't do comments here, but I'll leave my contact details in the description, and if you'd like to chat about any of this publicly, join the Ultimate Fashion History Facebook group. It's always a party at the Scotch of St. James over there. Now, although I just said that there's no overall costume credit for Georgie Girl, the production made sure that the designer for one of its characters gets a major shout-out in the title credits. Mary Quant, Miss Rampling's Clothes by Mary Quant. And this was a big marketing move for selling the movie as a piece of swinging London to the American movie market. The movie debuted at the absolute height of Mary's global fame. The designer offered the fashion component to the idea of swinging England, and you didn't have to be a dedicated follower of fashion to have known her name in 1966, because everybody knew Mary Quant's name in 1966. And choosing Mary for this mission just fed into all of the other swinging England signifiers that we see in Georgie Girl. Everything from London landmarks to men in bowler hats to the eating of fish and chips. As I said in my intro, this movie is remembered as being a happier one than it actually is. And surely part of that is because of the relentlessly cheerful theme song, a hit for the Seekers. The music was by Tom Springfield, Dusty's brother, and the lyrics were by well-known actor Jim Dale, who went on to be nominated for no less than 5 Tony Awards and winning 1 for his leading role in Barnum on Broadway. Obviously, I can't even play 1 second of the Seekers' snappy original here because Sony Music or whoever would just shut me down. But Georgie Girl is the only song that can work with this episode, right? But happily, the incredibly talented mystery fingerstyle guitarist who has a fabulous YouTube channel came to this girl's rescue and kindly allowed me to use his brilliant version of the song here. This is what you're listening to. What an absolute lifesaver, and I'll leave a link to his channel in the description area. So worth subscribing to. The screenplay to Georgie Girl was written by Peter Nichols and Margaret Forster, based on the latter author's novel of the same name. Now, I read the novel years and years ago, decades ago in fact, and I remember really enjoying it. And also, I remember that the movie stayed pretty close to the book, especially in the way the titular character was presented. Georgie, a young woman in her 20s who's described as being big and ungainly and even ugly. Even her on-screen father says she looks like the back end of a lorry. In fact, the marketing of the movie focused on how big Georgie was supposed to be. Georgie is big. Now, sure, this has a double meaning. The movie is a big hit, but also this poster is nodding towards the character's size. And all of this was problematic in terms of casting because Georgie, the character, was meant to be this big and ungainly and desperately unattractive girl. And lovely Lynn Redgrave was none of these things. And neither was the first actress who was slated to play the role, Lynn's sister, Vanessa. Indeed, the script had been rewritten when Vanessa signed up for the part, with all references to weight removed and replaced with other adjectives to suggest that Georgie was somehow awkward and unlovable. I've never seen that version of the script, but I could imagine Georgie being described as too tall to find a fella or too gangly or something. Anyway, Vanessa dropped out of the project just before filming was to start and suggested her sister take the role instead. And to keep the project even more in the family, their mother, actress Rachel Kempson, played the role of James Mason's hypochondriac wife. Still, the problem remained as to how to turn a slim and pretty girl into a young woman who was supposed to be somewhat freakishly unattractive. And you know what? It's really disturbing in 2021 to watch this movie and to hear the way that Georgie is described by other people. I actually found it quite upsetting to watch it again. I'm so glad that times have changed. Well, the production utilized multiple tricks to change Lynn's physicality. They put slim Lynn in bulky, oversized sweaters, dresses that were too large for her with big prints to accentuate volume, this bulky leather coat worn with a headscarf tied, not in the chic 60s manner, with the ends pulled from the front and tied at the nape of the neck a la Audrey, but in this dowdy, knees-up Mother Brown style. In fact, all of Georgie's wardrobe is way too mature and old for a girl of her age in 60s London. But also, Georgie makes it clear to us that she has intentionally stepped away from the fashion mores of her own era and generation. She chooses clothes intended to make her look frumpy and unappealing, like this dowdy housecoat which she's teamed almost comically with a bath cap. Now, Georgie's no shrinking violet. She is a strident, strong and rather noisy individual, and her favourite attire is almost obnoxiously unflattering, as if to say, you can't make fun of me because I'm already making fun of myself. Ergo, you can't hurt me. This is my armour. In one scene, she is gifted with a very pretty chiffon party dress, which of course she eschews. And am I wrong? But I think that Georgie re-gifts the dress to Meredith for her wedding, with much alteration and sans the big chiffon bow. At the very start of the movie, during the opening credit sequence with that catchy tune, we see Georgie considering making an effort with her appearance. She hesitates outside of a hair salon, seems quite fixated with the elaborate coiffes on offer, bites the bullet, gets her hair done. And disaster strikes. The hairdo is simply too much for daytime and too elaborate for a girl dressed like Georgie, and also these sort of enormous coiffes piled high were kinda out of style for girls of her age in England in 1966. This was the era of Vidal Sassoon or long flowing tresses, so poor Georgie feels so horribly self-conscious that she goes into a public toilet to wet her hair, rid herself of her brand new hairdo, so that she can again revert to her disguise. That of the frumpy, schlumpy, unlovable clown. And we know that this is a disguise born of her unhappiness and never getting what she wants, because at the end of the movie, when she is happy and does get what she wants, we see the real Georgie Girl, who all along was a very pretty, slim young woman with lovely hair. So although Georgie Girl isn't really a Cinderella story in the traditional sense, we are certainly made aware at the end that the frumpy Georgie was just a costume, a disguise she put on. And isn't it amazing how many movies of the 60s featured people in disguises of one sort or another? And so it's a credit to the wardrobe department for making this lovely young woman look so dowdy throughout most of the movie. But really the kudos goes to Lynn Redgrave, because she acted like a homely girl so convincingly that it almost comes as a shock when you see her at the end looking like Lynn Redgrave. And of course, Georgie's psychological disguise as clownish housefrau works in great contrast in scenes with her flatmate, exquisite it girl Meredith, played with cold-hearted perfection by the lovely Charlotte Rampling, dressed throughout in tiny, mini Mary Quant dresses. Now, although Mary Quant gets a costume credit for Miss Rampling's wardrobe, I'm not sure if Mary made these dresses specifically for the movie, like this one here with the polka dots and Peter Pan collar, or if in fact she chose Charlotte Rampling's wardrobe from one of her Ginger Group collections and then tailored them or altered them for the movie. Either way, these dresses are terrific. Now, I have made no secret that the mod mid-60s look of the sleeveless shift dress with geometric features is not one of my favorite fashion history moments. These dresses in real life, no matter who designed them, are very, very stiff usually. They use very heavy, thick textiles to keep that form. But come on, they look absolutely great here. And of course, it had to be Mary Quant who gets the credit, right? She was the name that was internationally known and really played into the British invasion. Mary Quant's wardrobe for the character of Meredith speaks perfectly to the spirit of freedom synonymous with the Youthquake. Wardrobe was also used to exaggerate the differences between Georgie's two love interests. Alan Bates as the lovable, irresponsible Joss is full-on youthful Carnaby Street with his Lord John suits, leather caps and op-art ties, whereas James Mason represents both the establishment and the older generation in immaculate Savile Row suits, old-school ties, and he even wears a bowler hat. So Georgie Girl is a really interesting movie in terms of costume, and it's also very visually interesting throughout, borrowing as it does from so many different genres. Part kitchen sink drama, part Youthquake romp, part Nouvelle Vague, with even a few surrealist moments that are visually informed by Fellini, including his own interest in costumes and disguises. Georgie Girl is a wonderful movie, and not only different to how I remembered it, but even better than I remembered it. Well, I hope you enjoyed this episode of Fave Film Fashion here on the UFH. I'll be back very soon with more of your favorite fashion history moments. Until then, don't forget to subscribe, click the bell to get notifications of new episodes, and until next time, don't just window shop, stop and buy, always. I do. Thanks for watching. Bye for now.